Damn.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Political Jargon Show. My name is Eddie Quintana, host of the Political Jargon Show. Today is April 4th, 2018. I hope everyone is ready to talk about politics today. It's going to be a great day to talk about politics. We got a lot of stories to talk about. We're going to cover Trump's recent comments on Syria and how they are not to be trusted, considering everything that his administration is saying on the issue is completely one thing, and then it's another, and then it's another, and then it's another, and then it goes back to the first thing, and then you're back to the fourth thing, and it just goes on and on and on and on. Then we've got Mick Mulvaney, who is just doing something absolutely ridiculous. And we're going to talk about the insanity of that and how it's kind of still happening around other departments of the federal government as well. And then we've got this guy who I've never heard of, David Barton. He's saying a ridiculous thing involving church and state and his completely nonsensical, illogical logical argument. Like if you just looked at it, because when we get to it, I'm not gonna lie, at first I was like, that makes sense, but then you read into it and you realize where he's coming from and what he's actually saying, and it's just not, it's a logical argument, but that's not how the rules work. So it's illogical and based on nothing. So we're gonna get into that, but first let's go ahead and start with this clip of Trump. Let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? So let's go ahead and start with this clip. Where does it start? I believe it starts here.
I want to bring our troops back.
Okay, it's a little bit farther back.
I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start to get out.
It's coming quickly.
I want to get out. I want to bring our troops back home. I want to start rebuilding our nation. Think of it, $7 trillion over a 17-year period. We have nothing except death and destruction. It's a horrible thing. So it's time. It's time.
So that was the Donald Trump talking about Syria, and because he's Donald Trump, he makes a very good point, and then he just fucks it up because he gets the numbers wrong, because he's not smart enough to understand the difference between the $7 trillion number and the point he's making. So let me go ahead and just say I agree with Trump on this. We don't need to be in Syria. I mean, Syria is in the middle of it's a proxy war. Vox did a great piece explaining how Syria came to be and how ISIS formed and how the Gulf states is funneling money into Syria, and then Russia got involved and the United States gets involved, and then Israel got involved in Syria, and it just started from a civil war between Assad and the Syrian people. It was a fantastic piece. It's on YouTube. Go ahead and find it. It's really enlightening. So, but we're not talking about why the conflict in Syria happened. We're talking about those specific comments. So at first, what Trump was saying was correct. We don't need to be in Syria right now. Syria poses no major threat to the United States. And we do need to build our country back up. But because he's Trump, I still have to find a problem with it, which makes me look like a bad guy. Because even when I agree with Trump, I have to disagree with Trump and prove and tell people why he's wrong for what he's saying, even though what he's saying is correct. So let me just go ahead and explain. So right now, here we go. This is coming from the Washington Post, but a number of other people have said this, and this story is from February, but he has said that $7 trillion in the Middle East line before. So it's not true. Now, there's a caveat with that, because while it's not true, the United States spent about $1.8 trillion on the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. So that's where that number comes from. If you include Pakistan and Syria, it's about $3.6 trillion from 2001 to 2016 from a Brown University study. Also included with the Brown University study is the $7 trillion number. The number Trump, quote, the number Trump is citing seems to come from another Brown University report, one that estimates future spending all the way out to 2050. The figure also includes interest on the debt and veterans care for the next 3 decades. So while Trump is right on the issue, we're in 8 different countries right now, and we don't need to be. He still gets the number wrong. So I still have to come out here and go, Trump's right on the substance, but he's still wrong as well. Because the $7 trillion number is all wars from Iraq to Afghanistan, or all interventions from Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, and then there's another one, but I don't know the 8th place that we're in right now. I mean, we have troops in Niger. I mean, we have like 800 military bases all over the world. So I'm confident that is going into that as well. So the United States will spend $7 trillion all the way out to 2050 to blow up brown people living in caves in the middle of the desert. But then a citizen of the United States comes up and says, hey, listen, maybe we should have universal health care, Medicare for all. They go, how are you going to pay for that? I mean, we have all the money in the world for blowing up people all across the world and keeping up with our 800 military bases, but then you want to give people basic health care because it's a basic human right? Go fuck yourself. See, that's such bullshit, because like we don't need to be in Syria. It's none of our concern. They're having a civil war. I mean, we shouldn't be involved with their civil war, because then it makes it our problem. It's not our problem that the people of Syria are trying to to overthrow Assad. That's not our problem. Why are we getting involved? We're getting involved because Syria has oil and Russia is getting involved. And we think that because we're America, anything we do is right by definition, and it's just not true. International law is international law for a reason. It's not international law minus America because America's always right. That's not the name. International law and the Geneva Conventions and all these different things that everyone has to follow, we just blatantly ignore. Any other country that does what we do, or any country that did what we did, or does or do, any country that would do what we do would get severe backlash from every major industrialized world, the UN, their neighbors. I mean, it's incredibly naive to just think that America's doing something, therefore it's right by definition, because it's just factually incorrect. So we shouldn't be in Syria. Trump just recently froze $200 million to Syrian relief for towns who were just released of ISIS. That's good. That's $200 million that now Americans can use, and maybe we can use to get to single-payer health care. It'd be cheaper for everybody. You get better results. You pay less, and you pay less, get better results. It's cheaper for the next 10 years. I mean, everyone's covered. There is no creepy middleman trying to make a profit off of you. I mean, all these different things are very important. So Trump is correct, and again, Trump is also correct on, this is something I wanted to cover, but I'm not much of an economist, so I don't really understand. I'll be blatantly honest. I understand, basic economics, but Trump going after Amazon and for paying zero federal dollars in taxes last year. Again, that's good, but it's first of all an empty threat to bring up Amazon because you just passed a multi-billion-dollar tax cut for corporations. You know, Amazon needs to start paying taxes because that's hurting American industry, and we really need to focus up on that, and Amazon is not doing anything, and they want to use our services without paying taxes. You just gave them a tax cut! You just gave them a tax cut! So you're telling me one thing, that you're going to get really tough and be an alpha male on Amazon paying zero in federal dollars or zero in federal taxes last year, but then on the side you're going to give them a tax cut. If they're paying zero in taxes, I mean, giving them a tax cut, you're not. They're already paying zero in taxes. I mean, it's empty threats. And again, tied in with that was NAFTA. NAFTA was a big story the other day. It's empty threats. Do it. Like I don't understand. Like, do it. Like, now there's a slight distinction because the President of the United States can push for, he can't create it, but he can lobby for and push for legislation that would increase taxes on specific tax brackets or corporations. The President of the United States may not be able to just pull out a NAFTA without congressional approval. So with the NAFTA thing, he would probably have to go through Congress. But Trump with executive order could just be like, okay, Amazon, here's what you're going to do. If you don't bring your taxes back, which you avoided, which is illegal, I'm the executive branch. I have to enforce the laws. Executive order, if you don't bring the money back, you have to pay what you pay in taxes plus a $500 million fine. Or you could just say, okay, Amazon, you don't, or any other, because, like, let's also be 100% specific. Amazon, Walmart, Big Oil, I mean, other multinational corporations, just the Panama Papers from, like, 2015, nobody remembers that, apparently, but it was proven that these companies were using Panama as a tax haven to avoid paying taxes. And so what you do for any of those people is say, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to pay the tax rate plus extra money. Or if you outsource your jobs and you're based in America and you give it to someone in Thailand so you can make more of a profit, we're going to put a tariff or a fine on you so that when you bring the product back in the United States, it'll get heavily financed and priced so it would be cheaper for you to just do the job here in America. Because I mean those are two very easy options that Trump could do right now while being tough with Amazon. And again with Syria, he can do it right now. We didn't need congressional approval to go into Syria. You don't need congressional approval to get out of Syria. Do it. I mean, like, that's what I don't understand. Like, he talks, like, that's the thing, is that candidate Trump always talked a populist game. His rhetoric on this is candidate Trump. His rhetoric on NAFTA, his rhetoric on war, his rhetoric on infrastructure. I mean, all of that candidate Trump stuff was great. Now, it obviously was contrasted with, I have no idea who David Duke is, even though I know who David Duke is, and I'm not here to condemn him, and it's going to take me 3 or 4 days before I actually say, okay, listen, I know who he is, and I don't agree with him. So, I mean, that stuff, plus the, man, I will cover your legal fees, just punch him in the face, okay? I just recently got in a conversation with a dude who told me that he didn't like how Joe Biden threatened to beat up our president, or said he would beat up our president. And my first reaction was, the Trump applauded violence in his own rallies. So you're obviously not upset about the violence part. You're just upset that anybody would criticize Lord Emperor Daddy Trump. And sorry, that's what people are here for. If you're going to be president, you're going to be criticized. If you can't handle it, shit or get off the pot. Like, I mean, just because your guy's in power doesn't mean he does everything right. Like, I don't understand, like, why that's such a hard... Like, Obama did shit wrong. He escalated war in the Middle East. He did a bunch of shit wrong. Why am I blanking on all of Obama's... His drone strikes, again, was unable to close down Guantanamo Bay, which is, illegal. Expanded NSA spying, destroying Fourth Amendment rights. I mean, just completely, like, on all of these big issues, just, like, he messed up totally. He messed up awful. And then Trump did the exact same thing. Trump is now in charge of this massive spy apparatus, which is breaking our Fourth Amendment and due process rights. I mean, it's incredible. So this talk on Syria is great, but we all know Trump says one thing and does another. So we're not. So how I see it is with Pompeo now as chief of staff, I believe, and John Bolton as national security advisor, and the one girl who I mentioned yesterday, with her as she's coming into CIA director. The Trump administration has gotten way more hawkish. So for him to appoint all these different people, John Bolton, who has never met a war he hasn't liked, and got in a debate with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson was correct on everything that he said. John Bolton is that far right. I disagree with Tucker Carlson on everything he's ever talked about, because Tucker Carlson is good at bringing in the most craziest people and presenting the argument as this is the left. This isn't, the subsection of people who are less than 5% of the left, because it's easier just to say, and here is a major contributor to the left and Democrats and progressives and liberals or whatever. And it's some like 22-year-old in an Antifa blocking everything in wearing sunglasses, wearing masks, covering his face with, with like communist Antifa flags around him and saying ridiculous things, or like a university which is doing a ridiculous thing as well. I mean, like, and presenting it as this is what everybody's talking about, when in reality, nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about this. You're just talking about this. So he's really good at that. But this was a time where it was just a one-on-one interview, and Tucker was talking and John Bolton was talking, and Tucker kept bringing up point, bang, just bang, 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 just killing John Bolton. But John Bolton's the one in the administration, not Tucker Carlson, okay? So the Trump administration recently just said, by appointing all of these different people to high decision-making jobs, yeah, we're going to be more hawkish. Maybe the most hawkish administration we have ever seen before in our life. And now that brings into question, will Republicans start a war before the 2020 midterms to boost approval ratings? Because we all know that as Americans, it's always just like a regular football match or basketball match. We got to root for our side. So if we go to war with somebody, we got to be on the side of America. And if you're not, you're anti-American, you're unpatriotic, you hate this country, all these different things that we heard during the Iraq War. And so that wasn't a valid question, I feel like, 4, 5, 6, 8 months ago. It wasn't a valid question, but now it is. With all these hawkish appointments, will we see a war before let's say the start of 2020 or a couple months into 2020. Who knows? Maybe John Bolton has the year of the president now. John Bolton has never met a war he hasn't liked. We could. So while I applaud Trump's words that he is speaking, everything else that he's done for pulling out of the Middle East has been the exact opposite. He increased military spending in his budget. He top military advisors, which is the next story we're talking about. Top Pentagon and state officials on Tuesday said the U.S. won't be leaving Syria anytime soon. Even as President Trump indicated that the same day that he wants to pull troops from the war-torn country. U.S. Central Command Head General Joseph Vaughtle said well over 90% of the land once held by Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, has been liberated, particularly in the north and eastern portions of the country, but that the military must maintain its presence there. Okay, what they don't tell you about this, though, is that the United States has a military presence there, but the people on the ground are Shia militias and the Syrian army and the Kurds. The United States has a military presence there, but the people who actually freed who went in and freed the land were all Shia militias and the Free Syrian Army, and I don't even know if it's necessarily the Free Syrian Army, but the Syrian rebels and the Kurds who have freed in those areas. So the United States has played a role. I'm not going to be as far left as other people who I agree with on a lot of issues who say that the U.S. had no effect on freeing those areas, because I don't think that's necessarily true, but it's definitely not the work. The land that has been freed is not because Donald Trump assumed presidency on January 20 at 12:01 p.m. January 20th, 2017. It's not like everything just switched and ISIS all of a sudden was starting to lose. ISIS has been losing for a while. I mean, 2016 we dropped 26,000 bombs on all 8 of the countries that we are presently in militarily. So it's kind of skewed in that way. The United States played a role, but the people who deserve the credit for freeing the 90% of the land once held by ISIS is the Kurds and the Syrian army and the Shia militias on the ground who are doing all the dirty work trying to free Syria from all of these ISIS-controlled towns. Quote, there are still some areas where they are present and that we will have to continue to operate on, Vaughtle said at a U.S. Institute of Peace event in Washington. So I just want to point out the irony of that. An Institute of Peace, a conference for peace, yeah, we're going to have to continue to do war more. We're going to have to stay there for more. And there is no peace. We have to stay there and be in the middle of a war forever. Because Tillerson, even though he got booted out of Trump's administration in February, I believe, of this year, said the United States military has no plan to pull out of Syria, and we have a plan to be there indefinitely. That's what he said. A plan to be there indefinitely. We're not pulling out of Syria anytime soon. If you actually bought into Donald Trump's rhetoric on we got to pull out of the war, we need to invest here, it's brought nothing but death and destruction, you're a hook, line, and sinker into his rhetoric. He's not telling the truth. He's not telling the truth. It's the opposite. Everything is leading to the opposite. If you really wanted to pull out of Syria, you would just do it because you're the president and you can. You didn't need congressional approval to get in. You don't need a congressional approval to get out. You wouldn't expand military spending, however much, over your last budget. And all of your generals and former Secretary of States wouldn't be saying the military is planning to stay there indefinitely. And the military must maintain a presence there. And quote, we are in Syria to fight ISIS. That is our mission, and our mission isn't over, and we're going to complete that mission, McGurk said. Now give it 6 months. Give it 8 months. When the military has been there for 6 months longer, they will change why they have to be there. They will change why the United States must have a military presence. Keep this in your mind right now. As of April 4th, 2018, they're saying our mission in Syria is to fight ISIS. Now, give it 6 to 8 months. See what they say about why the military must be in Syria right now. Because I'm willing to bet $20 right now that it's not because they're there to fight ISIS. That's my bet. And I could be completely wrong, but that's my bet. Because we have been saying we are there for the past, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years now. It's not going to end, and they're just going to find more reasons to stay in Syria anyways. It's Trump just expanded military spending. I mean, what else do you need to prove for me to say, to tell you that Trump is lying through his fucking teeth and we're not getting out of the Middle East anytime soon? What else needs to happen? I don't understand. Like everything that I've pointed out in the last 30 minutes, or in the last, I don't know how long, in the last 15, 20 minutes maybe? What else needs to Trump needs to come out and just say, yeah, no, we're not leaving. What I said was a lie. For you to finally say that Donald Trump is lying? Like, what else needs to happen? I don't understand. Like, oh my, it's so frustrating because this is one of the reasons why he won, is because he talked a good game on infrastructure, on war, and on trade deals, and the Democrats were just like, nah, everything's fine right now. I mean, we could do some things, I guess, like, you know, maybe not just, maybe not be mean to trans people, or like, you know, not, you know, I mean, like, but I mean, on the whole, everything's fine. And the Republican Party, I think, not because they calculated this way, it was just a fluke accident, said that somehow got the guy that was, you know, anti-trade deals, wanting to pull out of the wars, wanting to rebuild and put an infrastructure plan forward. I mean, how that happened, I don't know, but the Democrats really need to pay attention, because those things... Now, of course, it's Trump, so all of them are the opposite. We're not pulling out of the Middle East. We're staying in Syria. It's just empty remarks, and it's not true. The infrastructure plan which he put forth would basically privatize infrastructure, so it wouldn't be used to better America. It would be used to make a profit. So it's not even like a good infrastructure plan. And then trade deals. I mean, all he's done for the past year and 4 months now is just basically said, I'm going to pull out of NAFTA. Believe me, it'll be great for America. Mexico and Canada are treating America badly, and so we're going to pull out and we're going to renegotiate NAFTA until America can finally get it. When in actuality, we're not even doing that. Like, we're not even trying to pull out of NAFTA. Like, so and like, he stopped TPP, but then he took TPP, the worst part of TPP, and he's using those areas to renegotiate and put into NAFTA. So it's like, what the hell? So like, if Democrats can run with what candidate Trump said, but then actually do those things, have the government spend money on infrastructure, have the government spend money on universal health care, have all these different things, you know, pull out of the trade deals, like, actually, like, put forth a bill to get rid of the United States out of NAFTA, and don't pass TPP, and actually pull out of the Middle East. All these different things. If Democrats can do that, they can win not only 2018 but 2020, and for the next couple of elections after that. So, I mean, that's basically what we have to talk about for that. So now I want to move on to this, because this is fucking hysterical. All right. So Mother Jones is reporting. The head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau asked Congress to gut his own agency. He calls the Bureau the very definition of tyranny. So, before joining the Trump administration, White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney made no secret of his dislike for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency created in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis to better supervise Wall Street. As a congressman, Mulvaney proposed legislation to eliminate the Bureau, calling it a sick, sad joke. Now, I don't know about you, but I believe the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was implemented in 2010 or so by Elizabeth Warren, and it's given back millions and millions, if not billions of dollars to consumers who would have been fucked over by Wall Street. 2011, they were part of the Dodd-Frank. I want to know how much they've given back to people. Returned 11 point from Fortune.com, which recovered $11.8 billion for consumers. So the thing that Mick Mulvaney is the head of this agency, and he's saying, yeah, cut my budget. I mean, that's the thing, man. So, I have to. Oh God, what is happening?
We are going to be cutting.
So I have to get into this, but at first, we'll read through this because it's so funny. Mulvaney on Monday presented his first report to Congress on the work of the Bureau, recommending 4 major changes to the CFPB's structure, funding, and oversight that would vastly weaken the consumer watchdog. Oh, great. Okay. The report offers yet more evidence that Mulvaney is capitalizing on his temporary position atop the CFPB to bring years of proposals to undermine the agency to life. The Bureau is far too powerful and with precious little oversight of its activities, Mulvaney writes in a blistering introduction. Mulvaney then cites the Federalist Papers, quoting James Madison on how overly powerful bureaucracies meet the very definition of tyranny. While there are, in fact, many checks on the CFPB's activities across all 3 branches of government, Mulvaney calls the CFPB's current structure a warning sign that a lapse in democratic structure and Republican principles has occurred. Okay, so what Mick Mulvaney is saying right now is, imagine your school principal saying, hey, listen, we're going to cut out math because we don't need it. Cut my budget for math. We really don't need it. In fact, cut out my budget for science as well because we really don't need that either. Why would you put in somebody, again, this is the thing, Betsy DeVos, Secretary of Public Education, doesn't believe in public education. Scott Pruitt, Director of the EPA, sued the EPA multiple times and wants the EPA to be destroyed. Mick Mulvaney, head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, doesn't believe it should be existed and should never have been made, even though it has saved consumers $11.8 billion in lost revenue that would have been hijacked by Wall Street and never seen from the consumers again. So the thing that makes me more left than anything else is Republicans' fetish and just illogical hatred of the government because of beliefs of the Cold War and big governments coming to destroy, all these different things, and just the most irrational, just pussy, scared, paranoid vision of the government, and how they only want to get in power to undermine that power that they just got into because they don't believe it should exist. It's not even an argument of the government has too much power, so we're going to take its power away. It's this shouldn't exist, even though it's been proven that it's helped the American people. But it doesn't matter because it's the government. The most irrational, paranoid fear ever. Based in no logic, just based in the fact that the governments of the 50s and 60s diverted to communism, even though the hatred and the rhetoric on communism would make it so that communism never comes to America, they still somehow believe that all these different things like like Medicare for all, and you know the CFPB, and an infrastructure plan, and anything that the government does that isn't military spending or defending individual rights is communism, which is just not true. It's just not true. Like, I can't have an argument with somebody who believes that the government shouldn't even be a thing, because you have to have a semblance of rules and law. And so just, I mean, I think the analogy I used of, imagine you're president saying of a high school or middle school or elementary school, yeah, we're going to cut funding for math, and instead we're going to I don't even know what would be the right analogy for doing this, because what he's basically saying is we're going to cut funding for the CFPB to oversight Wall Street, meaning Wall Street's going to make some more profit. So I don't even know who Wall Street would be in that analogy, but it doesn't really matter, because Mulvaney's basically your school president saying, yeah, I don't believe in math or science, so I'm going to ask the state government to cut funding for the school because I don't want funding for math and science, which doesn't help the school. It makes it worse. So, like, it's already been proven that the CFPB has helped people. It's given back $11 billion in revenue that would have been lost and not been able to be retrieved due to Wall Street recklessness and loopholes. So, I mean, that alone, if that doesn't make you pause for a second and go, listen, man, I'm a hardcore Republican, but that's kind of fucked up. Like, that's kind of fucked up in so many different ways. Then you're just blind and a follower, and that's all you are, is just Team Republican. Republicans never do anything right, and anytime that they make a factually bad move, they're playing, 48,742D chess. It's in the long term. They're playing 3D chess. They're playing the political, which in reality, no, they're not. They're just fucking the middle class. Like both the Republican Party, the far right party, and then the Democratic Party, the center right party, except for when it comes to some social issues, which is center, are just fucking the middle class over. And it's incredibly frustrating that someone like Mulvaney has power in a position he doesn't even believe should be a position, when somebody who would want to make it better could be in that position, helping people while also making sure that that it doesn't get too big. It's so frustrating being a Republican. How are people Republicans? I don't understand. And that's a little fucked up for me to say, but when you see shit like this, and when you see Paul Ryan saying, "Hey, listen, we're going to pass a tax cut for the wealthiest people in America, explode the deficit, and then turn around and cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid," how we're going to cut entitlement programs? How does that not upset people? Like, I don't understand how Republicans look at that and go, "Oh yeah, Paul Ryan's smart. He's making a good decision." Like, that's fucking you over. That's fucking your grandma over. That's fucking people over. And like, you blew up the deficit. It's not Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid spending that's fucking the deficit over. It's the fact that in the 1950s and early 1960s, when in the golden age of American economics, when the middle class moved and there was major production, the tax burden, the federal tax burden, fell on the top 1%. Like 38% of the burden was on the top 1%. That number may be a little off. I don't have the number in front of me, but now in like 2016 or 2015, whenever the study was done, they hold like 8 or 9% of the federal tax burden. So when Paul Ryan says shit like that, how does that not make you not want to be a Republican? Like, I don't understand that. And like, social public education. When they elect Betsy DeVos, who doesn't believe in who doesn't believe in public education? How does that not make you go, the Republican Party's a little fucked up there. They fucking messed up there. They're really fucking over, our kids who want to get a public education. Damn, that's really fucking sad. How are people still like, no. See, Betsy DeVos is playing 3D chess, and what's actually going to happen is that by cutting funds to public schools to reimburse them into school vouchers, which may or may not go to private school, who knows, and so that would be it would allow competition in schools, because the school's a market. It's not just a place of learning. It's a market like every other thing, and so they're going to make profit, and then a couple years later, boom, better schools. Like, where's the logic from that? I don't understand. So before we go, because I've been ranting for a while now, this guy is fucking hysterical. So he's the story I teased in the beginning of the show. David Barton. David Barton wonders why churchgoers have to pay taxes if there's a separation of church and state. So let's go ahead and watch this real quick. It's 3 minutes or so. And I've only heard this one time, but then I read the article twice over to make sure I got everything. So this will be my second time watching, and then I'll comment on this. So let's go ahead and watch this real quick.
What the teachers union argued is that because families were going to Christian schools.
Okay, and so real quick, he's talking about the, I believe, Oklahoma and Kentucky teacher walkouts because they're not getting paid enough, which is great, by the way. I forgot to cover it, I guess, but that's good. So now West Virginia, I think, is still on strike. Now Kentucky and Oklahoma, I believe he said. And now Arizona's starting to get teachers unions and teachers on strike now. It's revving up in Arizona. So the teachers are finally making a stand because, if we can pay for teachers to get AR-15 training and pay for the AR-15s and the bullets and the vests that they have to wear, and of course the training, and apparently to Trump, if they get the training, they can get a bonus of some kind, but it's not really, he didn't go into numbers because, whatever. If we can pay for all that, we can definitely pay for them to get a basic increase in their salary, because they have one of the most important jobs in the American society. So let's go ahead and finish watching this real quick.
It violates separation of church and state, and really it's kind of a bad argument because...
Now, wait a minute. I got to ask.
Okay, so that guy talking right now who said, wait a minute, I got to ask you. He is Tim Barton, I believe. Or, yeah, David. Yeah, that's David. The first person talking was Tim, I believe.
If they really believe that, why did they take tax money from people who go to church? People who go to church shouldn't be required to put tax money in the state if there's a separation of church and state.
Right, because that's funding from religion.
That's right. Religion is funding the state. So how come they don't argue that, but they argue that you can't have your kids... I'm sorry.
Well, right.
I like that, David. I was thinking the other direction. Yours is a whole lot better. I was thinking if somebody gets a welfare check, they better not pay any tithes on it. They're not allowed to make a donation to the local church. But that's the wrong direction. I like yours better. If you make any money from religion or serving as church or any of that, you can't take any of your money, or shouldn't be allowed or required to taxed on that and give any of it to the government.
They're saying I can't take my kids and put them in state education or take them out of state education because that's religious. So why would they if they think I'm religious, why would they take my tax dollars and put it into the state?
If you are religious, right? Because now a religious person is helping fund the public, and there has to be a separation.
That's right, man.
Yeah, so
maybe I ought to file a lawsuit on that.
Okay. You're not you, the individual, are not a church, are not a religion. You're a religious person who lives in America who has to pay taxes. Separation of church and state means that the state will not take money from churches, not the people who are Americans going to church. I go to church. I'm Catholic. I'm paying taxes. That's incredibly simple-minded, idiotic, moronic, and just loathsome. Like, it's just loathsome. Like, a religious person is helping fund the public, and there has to be a separation of church and state. Well, I'm finally glad that you admit that there has to be a separation of church and state. So now, to get back to that argument, but remember that they are now admitting that there has to be a separation of church and state. So, but you're not a religious person helping fund the public. You're an American citizen helping fund the public. The church themselves, as a private entity, shouldn't be able to give money to the state. Just like unions shouldn't be able to give money to the state, or big oil shouldn't be able to give money to the state, or the military-industrial complex shouldn't be able to give money to the state. So you're not a religious person helping the public. You're an American citizen doing what you need to do in paying taxes to help fund the public. You're not a church. Therefore, you are a part of the state and the church. Like, you are an American citizen, meaning you are a part of a state. You go to church. You have to pay taxes. The church can't give money to the state. That goes against the First Amendment. I mean, I have to listen to this one more time.
What the teachers union argued is that because families were going to Christian schools, it violates separation of church and state, and really it's kind of a bad argument because
now wait a minute.
Hold on. Whoa. It's not that. Whoa, hold the phone. I just realized this. Back this shit. I wish I could back this shit up. Why can't I fucking skip ahead? All right. So basically what he said was, because the state argued that people are sending their kids to Christian schools. No. Whoa, hold the fucking phone, you idiotic, moronic idiot. It's not. People aren't upset that you're sending your kids to Christian schools. People are upset that you're using public funds to go to Christian schools. I went to a Catholic school. I didn't use public funds. I used it out of my parents' money because they wanted me to go to a private Catholic institution. I didn't ask the government to come in or the citizens of my city or state to pay for me to go to that because it's a private institution. You don't want to give money to people who get basic health care. It's the same thing. Nobody's going to give you money to go to a private institution, right? Now, healthcare shouldn't be a private institution because then it's a creepy middleman who's trying to make a profit and nothing else. When really, it should just be, the government, just basically saying, yeah, okay, anybody can go to anywhere because the government will foot the bill because they pay taxes. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But I just realized that nobody's saying that because you want to send your kids to Christian school, there has to be it's not that it's because you're trying to use public funds to go to a church. And as the words of Thomas Jefferson said, the First Amendment is supposed to, quote, represent a wall of separation of church and state. So it's illegal under the First Amendment. There is no way to change that. You can't change that. You have the freedom to practice what religion you want. The state has the freedom to not specifically endorse any religion because you have the freedom to practice any religion you want, and the state is supposed to represent everybody. So if it picks one religion, it has to pick them all. So if it picks the Ten Commandments on courthouses, then it has to pick up Jewish law, Muslim law, Satanic law. satanic worshipers who consider themselves a religion. Pastafarianism. It has to pick up Hinduism. It has to pick up Buddhism. It has to pick up all of these different laws and put them equally up there. Or you just don't put anything up there. Like, it's not that difficult. Like, it's not that hard, because the state is supposed to represent everybody. Whether or not you think the state should be here in the first place, that's a totally separate discussion. The state is here. The state is supposed to represent everybody. So when it picks one religion over the other, it's not equal. The state is purposely choosing one section of people over the other. That is discrimination. You can't pick one side or the other. So that nobody's saying that because you want to go to Christian school, there has to be a separate. No, you can't use public funds to go to a Christian or Catholic or private school. You can't. You can't do that. That's not how that works.
They really believe that. Why did they take tax money from people who go to church? People who go to church shouldn't be required to put tax money in the state if there's a separation of church and state.
Right, because that's funding from religion.
That's right. Religion?
No, it's not funding from religion. The church doesn't give you a paycheck. Your job does. Or the government does if you work for the fire department, police department, any postal service, anything like that. So the church isn't paying into the government. The American citizen, you, which you claim to be America first, America this, America that. And then when it comes to paying tax, well, I mean, I don't really know if I'm American per se. I'm definitely religious. That has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with paying taxes. Religion, not religion. Don't give a shit. Doesn't matter. You gotta pay taxes. Are you a citizen? You gotta pay taxes. Being religious does not, it doesn't matter. Like, that has no concern on the discussion we're having right now. Absolutely none. None whatsoever. Let's watch this one more time.
Is funding the state. So how come they don't argue that, but they argue that you can't have your kids? I'm sorry.
Well, right.
I like that, David. I was thinking the other direction.
No, see, if you follow what that guy was saying, how come they argue that you can be taxed if you're religious, but then they don't argue that you can't send your kids to private school? No, the state is not stepping in and saying who can send their kids to private Catholic Christian school. The state is stepping in and saying you can't use public funds for public schools to fund religious schools. That's not how that works. People pay into that. People pay into through taxes to fund public schools. They're not there to fund, that's not just an open source of income. That's specifically for public schools. So, that's he stopped what he was saying because I think he realized, shit, that's kind of stupid. I'm not gonna lie, and I mean, it makes me look kind of dumb, I guess. But then the other guy has to step in and say, "Oh no! See, you're correct, man. Go fuck yourself."
Yours is a whole lot better. I was thinking if somebody gets a welfare check, they better not pay any tithes on it. They're not allowed to make a donation to the local church. But that's the wrong direction. I like yours better. If you make any money from religion or serving as church or any of that, you can't take any of your money or shouldn't be allowed or required to be taxed on that and give any of it to the government.
They're saying I can't take my kids and put them in state education or take them out of state education because that's religious. So why would they if they think I'm religious, why would they take my tax dollars and put it into the state?
If you are religious, right? Because now a religious person is helping fund the public and there has to be a separation.
That's right, man.
Yeah, so
maybe I ought to file a lawsuit on that.
It's not, again, I get caught up on this. It's not because you're a religious person. It's because you're an American. That's not why we tax people. It's not because, all right, taxes for Christians, 13% on income. Taxes on Jews, fuck the Jews, 20% on income. Personal income on Muslims, 99.5%. No, that's not how that works. That was incredibly funny. That's all I have for it. At the end of that, They said, we fucking nailed it. That's what we did. Damn, I'm going to file a lawsuit on that. Do it, bitch. Do it, bitch. Do it. File a lawsuit and say, I'm a religious person, I shouldn't pay taxes. See how far that fucking gets you. See how far that gets you. And I can't believe that you're so willing to just disregard and just not even mention that you're American like that. How dare you, you anti-American, unpatriotic filth. You must be a communist. That's what I get on a daily basis. By saying that America has done some fucked up shit like the war in Iraq and how we don't provide basic services and how we're taxed roughly the same as people in Europe, but we don't get any of the benefits that European people do in torturing people in Guantanamo Bay was probably not the best thing America's done. I'm un-American. So I'm just throwing that out there. Because you're so ready to just disregard that you're American for religious purposes to avoid paying taxes into the country that you love so much to help it fund the military and the police and public education and infrastructure and all these different things. So if you're willing to just throw away your American title like that, maybe you should just be deported because you're basically an illegal immigrant. If you're willing to just... Now, obviously, I don't believe anything I said in the last 4 minutes about all that joking about how this guy is un-American, because I don't believe that anybody can really be un-American. I mean, that's not necessarily true, but these people aren't un-American. It's just a joke, because the second I say anything like that, hey, maybe our government should pay for, basic health insurance and maybe, some basic college level education, but how dare you spend money on anything that isn't for blowing up people? I mean, that's true. So, anyways, that's the April 4th edition of the Political Jargon Show. Sorry, it got kind of weird the last 5 minutes or so, but my point still stands for this guy. It's not a religious person getting taxed by the state. It's the American citizen getting taxed by the state, and there is no other way around it. So, I'll see you guys in the next one. This was fun. We should do this more often. So, this was the Political Jargon Show. I'm Eddie Quintana, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great night, guys, and remember, in solidarity.